Absolutely, Cowboys Nation, let's get into this free agency picture for 2026. Because the list looks long on paper. But the real question is how many of these players actually fit into the Cowboys' future plan. This is one of those off-seasons that could define the roster for years. And the way Dallas handles this class will tell us a lot about where the team is headed. There are three types of free agents in the NFL: unrestricted, restricted, and exclusive rights. Unrestricted free agents can go anywhere unless they get tagged. And those are the names that always dominate the conversation. Restricted free agents are a little different because teams can apply tenders that limit options and force other teams to pay a price if they want the player. Then there are exclusive rights free agents, who basically have no negotiating power and will either return on a cheap deal or not play at all if the team decides to move on. Let's start with the biggest name on the Cowboys roster and one of the top players in the entire league, George Pickens. He is easily the most important free agent for Dallas, and honestly, I would not be surprised if he ends up being franchise tagged. In fact, I would be stunned if he was not. The Cowboys have shown a pattern of dragging these negotiations out, waiting until the deadline, letting everything play out, and then making a decision at the last possible moment. That approach is not ideal for a player of Pickens' caliber because it limits his flexibility and creates uncertainty for both sides. Now, I am not saying they will not get a deal done. I think they will, but I also think it will probably go down to the wire, maybe even past the draft. And we will not see a final answer until closer to the franchise tag extension deadline in June. If Pickens signs an extension before then, that is great. If he ends up playing on the tag, that is something I would rather avoid. Playing on the tag can be a short-term solution, but it ties up cap space and does not give the team the long-term security they need. Still, the Cowboys have a history of making these deals late, and I fully expect them to keep that trend alive. So the question is simple: will they get it done or not? This is going to be one of the biggest storylines of the offseason, and I want to hear what you think. Is it a yes or a no? Let me know in the comments, because this is the kind of decision that could define the direction of the offense for years. Moving on from Pickens, let us talk about the running back situation. Miles Sanders is another free agent, and he had a solid season, but he never really looked like the game-changing back the Cowboys hoped he would be. He had one big run before he got hurt, and after that, his impact was limited. With the emergence of Malik Davis and Jaden Blue, Dallas might feel like they can replace him without missing a beat. The numbers do not really make sense for Sanders to return, especially if the Cowboys can keep building depth at the position with cheaper options. That said, I would not be shocked if he signs elsewhere. The running back market is always unpredictable, and sometimes it is more about fit than talent. But from a financial standpoint, it seems like the Cowboys might be better off moving on now. Javonte Williams is a different story. I actually hope the Cowboys bring him back because he was better than expected in every way this season. The only real issue was his pass-catching ability, which was not great, but as a runner, he had his best season ever. There are some decent running backs in free agency this year, which could help drive down his price. The Cowboys have already talked to his agency, but I doubt we will see any real movement until closer to the combine and the start of free agency. If the price is right, I would absolutely be interested in bringing him back if they can keep him for a reasonable deal. I think he could be a valuable piece. So what do you think? Should the Cowboys keep Javonte or let him walk? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this is one of those decisions that could really impact the offense. Defensively, the biggest question is Donovan Wilson. He is going to play somewhere next year. There is no doubt about that. The real question is where. I think he was completely misused last season, and that falls on the coaching staff. He was playing too much deep safety, and that is not where he excels. Wilson is better in the box, closer to the line of scrimmage. And he also struggled to keep up with tight ends in coverage. With all that in mind, I would let him leave. I get that he is a good leader, but right now the Cowboys need talent, not just leadership. And honestly, the linebacker room needs an overhaul. That brings me to Kenneth Murray, who I also hope is gone. He was not good, and the trade for him felt like a bad decision influenced by the coaching staff. He had a couple of good games, but overall, he was just not effective. The Cowboys need players who can make plays consistently, not just show flashes. Jack Sanborn is another player who probably will not be back. There is one defensive coordinator candidate out there who might keep him, because of their college connection, but I do not think anyone would be upset if he did not return. The linebacker room needs fresh talent, and Sanborn did not exactly set the world on fire. It is going to be interesting to see what direction the Cowboys take. Will they bring in new faces, or will they try to make the same group work with a new coaching staff? Personally, I think new blood is needed. The defense has been underperforming for too long, and the roster construction has not helped. Now, I know some of you might be wondering about the edge rushers. Dante Fowler did not do much this year, and it was pretty clear he did not mesh well with the coaching staff. I would not be surprised if he returns on a cheap deal under a new defensive coordinator, but I also would not be surprised if he leaves and goes somewhere else. Sometimes players just do not fit, and it seems like that might be the case here. Sam Williams is another name that has been discussed, but he has not shown anything in the last 3 years. The coaching staff might have liked him, but the production just has not been there. It is hard to justify bringing him back when the team needs players who can make an impact immediately. Now, let us talk about Peyton Turner, because he is one of those names that looks good on paper, but has not shown much in real life. He was a former first-round pick, but he did not play this year due to injury. He was activated late in the season, but he never actually returned to the field at this point. I do not see a reason to bring him back. The Cowboys need players who can stay healthy and contribute. If Turner can come back and play, great. But the track record is not encouraging. The Cowboys have to be careful with guys who have a history of injuries, especially when they need immediate impact from their edge rushers. On the other hand, I do hope Jadeveon Clowney is back. Clowney was one of the few bright spots on the defense this year. He made plays, he brought energy, and he was a difference maker. The question is always the same with him: when does he want to sign, and for how much? Clowney has never been cheap, and he has never been predictable. He might want a deal that doubles what he made last season, and that is a lot of money for a player who is not a long-term answer. But at the same time, the Cowboys need talent up front, and Clowney is one of the few players who can actually play real snaps and make an impact. If the price is right, I would bring him back. He is the obvious internal option, and I think he would help stabilize the defensive line. What is the most you would pay Clowney per year? Let me know in the comments, because this is one of those decisions that could shape the defense. Moving forward, continuing on the offensive side, one of the biggest questions is what happens with the wide receiver room. Jalen Tolbert had a season that did not really pop the way some people expected. He showed flashes, but overall, he never became the consistent playmaker that the Cowboys needed. The real ones know what I am talking about, because you could see the moments where he looked like he had potential, but the consistency just was not there. With the way the receiver market is shaping up, I fully expect him to leave in free agency. He has shown enough to get a chance somewhere else, maybe as a veteran receiver who can compete for a role. The Saints are a team that has done that before, bringing in receivers who need a fresh start. I would not be shocked if Tolbert finds a new home and has a chance to grow in a different system. Now, I want to talk about the offensive line, because this is where the Cowboys have to get serious. Brock Hoffman is a name that I like, and I would be happy to bring him back. He has shown that he can start in the NFL, even if it is at a lower level. Given how bad offensive line play has been across the league, I would bet that some team gives him a chance to start for at least a year, just to see what he can do. That means the Cowboys might have to compete for him, and if they want to keep him, they should. Hoffman has value as a player who can step in and start, and that kind of versatility is important for a team that has struggled to find stability up front. Denai is another offensive lineman who I do not care much about bringing back. He struggled at tackle, and he did not show enough to warrant a return. He is a veteran, sure, and he hung around for a little while, but the Cowboys need to find better options. The offensive line is one of the most important units in the league, and you cannot keep rotating players in and hoping for the best. The Cowboys need to bring in talent that can actually protect the quarterback in open running lanes consistently. That is why I would like to see them explore other options, rather than just re-signing players who were not effective. On the other hand, I would not be opposed to bringing back Rob Jones, the guard who did not play at all this year because of a neck injury. The Cowboys liked him, and he gives them depth at guard. If Brock Hoffman leaves, Jones could slide into that role and provide some stability. He would not be expensive coming off an injury, and I think he could be a useful piece. The Cowboys have to be smart about how they allocate money. And bringing back a player like Jones for a reasonable price makes sense. It gives them flexibility and depth, and that is something they need. Corey Ballentini is another name that popped up, but he was only briefly on the active roster after being called up from the practice squad. The quarterback depth chart is going to look very different next year, and I assume that Ballentini is not coming back. He might have some value as a depth player. But the Cowboys are going to be looking at the bigger picture. C.J. Goodwin is a veteran leader, but age has caught up to him. And I do not know if he is as good as he once was on special teams if he does come back. It would be on a small deal, but I would not be opposed to moving on. The Cowboys need to keep improving the roster. And sometimes that means letting go of players who have been loyal, but no longer provide the same level of performance. Now, let us shift back to the defensive side because there are a few names that matter. Dante Fowler, as we mentioned, did not do much this year. He clearly did not get along with the coaching staff. And that is always a red flag if the Cowboys bring in a new defensive coordinator. Fowler might be willing to return on a cheap contract, but I also would not be surprised if he leaves and goes somewhere else, maybe even back to a team he is familiar with. The relationship between a player and the coaching staff matters. And if it is strained, it can impact performance. Fowler's situation is one of those where the Cowboys have to decide if they want to take a chance on a player who could be useful, or move on and find someone who fits the system better. Sam Williams is another player who has been discussed, but the last 3 years have not been kind to him. He has not shown the production needed to justify keeping him, and it is hard to argue otherwise. The defensive staff has been a huge issue, and I acknowledge that. Maybe a change in coaching could unlock something in him, but the production simply has not been there. The Cowboys need players who can make an impact now, not players who might break out in a new system. That is why I think the Cowboys should look for new options on the defensive line, rather than relying on players who have been inconsistent. Before we roll on, subscribe to Cowboys Wire News, drop a like, and turn on the bell. Your support keeps the Dallas Cowboys updates coming. Tell us what you think in the comments. Whispers spread quickly through league circles late last night as a stunning rumor involving the Dallas Cowboys began to take shape. According to multiple sources close to the organization, owner Jerry Jones may have personally ordered the removal of a starting player from the team, following a heated confrontation inside the locker room. The phrase attributed to Jones, "He is out of here," has echoed through social media and radio shows. Though no official confirmation has been offered by the franchise, what is known, at least through speculation, is that tensions had been simmering for weeks. Insiders suggest the locker room had become increasingly divided, with frustration boiling over after a verbal exchange reportedly escalated into a physical altercation. Several players were said to be present, and the argument allegedly crossed a line that Cowboys leadership could not ignore. Whether the incident was about playing time, leadership, or personal grievances remains unclear, adding fuel to an already intense rumor mill. Jerry Jones has never been a hands-off owner, and sources claim this episode reflected his old-school approach to discipline and control. The idea that a starter, not a fringe roster player, could be dismissed so abruptly has shocked observers around the league. Some believe the move, if confirmed, would send a clear message about authority and accountability inside the Cowboys organization. Others fear it could deepen existing fractures within a roster already under immense pressure. Agents and executives from rival teams are reportedly monitoring the situation closely, sensing a potential opportunity should the player indeed become available. At the same time, fans are left wondering whether this drastic decision, rumored to be made in the heat of the moment, could have long-term consequences for the Cowboys' stability until the team speaks publicly. The story lives in the gray area between fact and speculation. But one thing is certain, the mere possibility that Jerry Jones drew such a hard line has reignited debate about power, pride, and control in one of sports' most scrutinized locker rooms. That's a wrap from Cowboys Wire News. For breaking Cowboys updates, subscribe, drop a like, and turn on the bell. Tell us your take in the comments.